Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Paranormal, guys. We're glad you're here. We've got the phone lines open, 1-888-88-YERGZ, 1-888-88-YERGZ on the phone pad. You can also reach us by sending us a text. And let's see, who else? Oh, I need to thank the Parapost Network for allowing us on their network. And let's see. Well, let's get on with the show here. We got a couple great things lined up. First, let me find my cohort. There she is. How are you, Miss Cheyenne?
Fabulous. How are you?
Oh, you know, the same old. Well, let's bring Chris in. Chris Underwood. He is here today. He has got some great stories for us. He's an author and ex-military, correct? Is that right, Chris?
Actually, no.
Oh, okay.
It's military in the family, but my books have moved in that direction a little bit. Yes.
Okay, I guess that's what made me think you were ex-military. So it's definitely like the good conspiracy theories we were talking about. So
yes. Yeah, my books do get into a lot of conspiracy theories.
Well, good. So tell us a little bit about your. Well, actually, tell us a little bit about you. How did you become an author, and what sent you down this road? And
I've always gotten into writing. Even back in grade school, I think I've still got my first book that I wrote in like third grade about this three-headed snake with a little Crayola cover on it that I did and everything. But I took a lot of creative writing in college at Ohio State, but I still got my business degree and went that route. I just kind of figured that unless your name is Stephen King or something, you're going to have a really hard time getting somewhere. So I went to safe route and said, well, I'll come back to it later when I've had my fame and fortune, and it worked out exactly that way, except for the fame and the fortune. But yeah. So I just kind of came back around to it. Something sparked me enough to get me going, and that was mainly some concern about the power grid and things like that. That gave me a good storyline to think about and get something on paper.
Yeah, well, the power grid certainly is a topic that we all are aware that we are weak right now. So.
Yeah, and it it was coming up back in like 2010, 2012. It seemed to be a big buzzword in the media, and it kind of dissipated for a little while, and now it's coming up again.
How long did it take you to get that book out?
That first one was about 6 years. I joined some writers groups, and situations where you could turn in a chapter each month or two. You read them and critique
each other.
Yeah, and it was really good. You get some really good feedback. People don't hold their punches. It's not like you're giving your stuff to family or something where they're always going to say it's great. So you get some really good feedback, and it helped a lot.
That's awesome.
What gave you the ideas for your characters? Did you have people in your life that influenced them, or was this like comic book stuff?
Yeah, I had a lot of people around me that and I kind of used their basic character, and then I would mold what I needed for the story around that. But still, it gave me a good basis to start with.
I love hearing that too, because I'm glad that I'm not the only one that, like, when it comes to writing, is just like, well, this character is loosely based on this aspect of my best friend with this little thing over here thrown in. And
right, you put a little bit extra, or you need to have a character that's doing a certain thing for the storyline, but you still have that basic characteristic of the person thrown into it.
Makes me worry, where did they come up with the idea for Jack Bauer in 24? What was that based on?
Hard telling.
The world will never know.
I don't know if you ever follow that series. That was one that I always wondered, could this ever be? So, well, we also have a lot of comic book artists and authors in here, and a lot of times we'll hear that they have taken bits and pieces of history and freely used them and put them in their world, and put their characters that they made up like that. Is that sort of the way your process was when you were writing it, or?
Yeah. I think everything's really started coming together. I started writing like 2010, and things started coming together around 2016, and so we had the election coming up that was getting quite heated, and so that kind of got into my story. Although I didn't get political about it, don't mention any politicians as being characters, but it made me realize that when an election year is happening, that's when things happen. And so I included an election as part of the story that just helped to cause more to happen, because the power outage to occur right after an election.
We're in an election cycle now, so
I know it's kind of weird. It's really kind of weird that that one came out in 2017. And then the second book came out in 2019, which has a virus that was a man-made combination of things. But
we need to have a talk.
And so now the third one is coming out. But it was a combination of smallpox and the flu. But it kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Who's reading your mind here?
Yeah.
A good friend of mine who works for a 3-letter agency, he said that a lot of times they will tap comic book authors and other authors because they have an innate ability to see things in the future that they don't realize they're seeing. And they can train them to remote view. And I was always fascinated with that because he pointed me in the direction of a comic book that came out back in like 2000, at 2010, or no, was it maybe 2010? It came out, and then last 2020 is when it came to be executive. I got it sitting on my shelf over here. Executive Orders, I think was the name of the graphic novel. And he's like, this is exactly what happened. It was written in a comic book 10 years ago. He threw it in front of me, and he works for a 3-letter agency. Or he's retired now. Well, so they say. I was like, that's kind of crazy.
That gets back to the whole premise of 3 Days of the Condor, that movie with Robert Redford, where you have these novel readers, and they're reading for things that look unique and might actually work out in a real world, and spy books and things like that. And so when he came across something that was too close to reality, a 3-letter agency came in and killed everybody that had read the book.
Yep, don't get too close to the truth.
I got too close to the truth, and
the amount of creativity, not speaking from a biased standpoint at any point here, but the amount of creativity that these people have, it, especially once you get like a group of them together starting bouncing stuff off of each other, it's like, well, wait, if we made this even crazier and did this and this and this, and when you've got all these minds together, the possibilities are really endless there.
Yes.
It's going to drive me crazy. I'm going to look up the title of the comic book because I bought it in both electronic and paperback after he showed it to me. But and like I said, I don't know if there's any truth to that, but he said basically that they would use people for the knowledge that they have, and then train them to get more information from the future. And I know that sounds like a big conspiracy theory, but when he popped this down, it's called The Homeland. And it made me think twice. And when we interview, a lot of times when we interview authors and comic book writers, we ask questions like that about where do you get your ideas, your visions, what made you think of this,
I don't know. It came to me in a dream.
Yeah, it's weird how things come to you, and you just I think it was John Cleese, the guy from Monty Python's Flying Circus. He's given some speeches about the whole artistic process, and he said that writers and actors and other artists, they are able to put themselves into a state of play. They're able to just release their mind a little bit and play. And that's he thinks that's the unique part of being an artist.
I very much agree.
Yeah, it's a talent, just like painting, drawing. It's a talent
in any type of artistry, really. I mean, you look at the method actors that are out there, the painters, the writers, the different types of artists that are out there. I mean,
yes, and there's so many people who I've talked to, bought my books, and they just tell me it's just so amazing that they could never even comprehend trying to put together a story and put it on paper and all of that, and that just kind of proves the point even more so. That there's just a certain group of people who have that ability, and some more than others, and all of that.
So you may have some Stephen King in you soon.
And a thing with that too is that there are so many people out there that have that ability that just don't know that they do. I've had so many people just, like, whenever I've talked to them about things that I'm writing, give me some of the most brilliant ideas.
Mm-hmm.
No, you could go out here and do this. You could do this yourself. No.
Right. Yep. Don't take the chance. Don't take the leap.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's part of, like you said, you went the straight, the business route, the solid route. But then when you felt there was a point in time, you allowed yourself the freedom to open up more to it.
Right. Yep. To take a jump and just see where it took me. And took the time to do it.
Now,
so
if I could ask a piece of advice here, how did you stick to just one topic to get this book written on?
Yeah, it was a toughie. I just kind of kept going with it. Well, I guess when I became a prepper, and so I'm preparing for this one event, and also back then there was, being a prepper was kind of a popular thing. There was the Doomsday Preppers TV show. It was on Discovery and things like that, and it was all out there. And so you start thinking through of what are you preparing for, what's really scaring you, and then also what would you do on that first day, and what would it be like, and how would you prepare for that first day, so you would be a step ahead of everybody else. And so once you start going down that path, then let's put it on paper. And so my story, my book, it starts with that first day, and what the guy does for that first day, and then the second day, and it kind of goes a little bit forward from there.
Because I find it so hard, and it could just be with like my ADHD brain of having so many different ideas of things that I want to write about, that I'll get on like a kick of writing on, like, I've had a dream or have seen something that's sent me in the solid direction for this one part that I'm writing about, and then just all of a sudden something switches me over to this side. And
yeah, well, in that 6 or 7 years, I think I had 10 different versions of the story. Wow. With lots of different things happening. Oh, I had all kinds of crazy stuff going. Like the character got into a gun deal or something, and people got shot. But I had all these different situations, and then when it finally came down to it, I kind of grabbed the chapters that worked the best, and put them together into my first book.
Things together.
Mm-hmm. And then I still have some pieces left for the second book to play with.
That's what I was going to ask. Did the one book lead to the next book, and it's now leading into the third?
Yes. And that was also the crazy thing about it. You end the first book, and you've kind of built this world, the situation, and those are the pieces you have to work with when you go to the next book. And then when I got to the third book, like, okay, what have I got to work with? You know, and kind of you kind of set your own, you kind of put yourself into a box, but then you kind of try to expand a little bit from there. Yeah, and now here I am. I'm probably going to do a fourth book, and now I'm looking at, okay, what do I have to work with now?
I don't know if we
It's
asked,
an election year.
but what is the name of your books?
It's called The Cold Winter, and it's about the Niagara Falls power grid going down 3 days before Christmas with a big snowstorm coming in. So that builds a cold winter.
Oh, I
Very
see.
much so.
And it's just the Niagara Falls grid. So it's like Indiana to the Atlantic is taken out, and a little bit of Canada also, and that whole area up there with, and that's where the snow belt is, and so you're dealing with a cold winter, and also the thing is that there's still power in the other two grids, so when the power goes out, people are saying, okay, there's power down in Nashville, that's where I'm going, and so then the freeways get all clogged up, lots of people get displaced. Lots of people die, but people end up on people's doorstep, wanting some help, and it's all about how you react to that situation. And I try to, I have a more of a good natured feel about my people. They've kind of come together and they want to help people. If they're going to get out of it, they don't want to be stepping on somebody else to get there, kind of situation. Even throws a little bit of faith in there too. Because if in any emergency, people tend to look to God either for blame or for blessings.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to have a little bit of faith. Well, you sound like you have a good premise there. I mean, look at what Robert Kirkland did with the one thing with the zombies, and he's going 20 years later. So,
yeah, and it's funny how people have told me that my story is kind of like a zombie story. I'm like, well, yeah, the bad weather replaces the zombies. Where when you go outside, there's something out there that can kill you.
Yeah, especially up there in the north. Holy cow! I didn't. I grew up in Washington D.C., and you were talking about prepping. I think they prepped us as kids. So I remember as in elementary school that they would have the nuclear drills, and we were to dive under the tables.
Right. Yeah.
What the hell good is this school table going to do me this close to Washington D.C.?
Well, it puts you on the floor so that whatever dust is left of you will be easy to sweep up.
Exactly. For the next ones to come through.
Yeah. That's one thing I thought about with Ohio is that, am I close to a target? And, there's Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Here. It's here. That's about it. But you start thinking about that, if you're close to a target or not.
Yeah, that's you always wonder. But what's a target? Is it a large city? Is it military? Isn't
that the base that they were supposedly moving stuff to?
Oh yeah, Area 51 was supposedly moved there at one point in time.
I thought so, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah. That was a big conspiracy theory.
Yeah, that's where they hid the alien bodies or something. Well, I don't remember the whole story, but it seemed I heard somebody talking about that. They moved it, they scattered it all around the country so that you could never find the whole puzzle.
Yeah,
I don't know about that, but you mentioned conspiracy theories, and there's some out there that have come true. Well, a lot that have come true, and then there's some that just make you want to put a tinfoil hat,
but they're all worth discussing, though. They're all worth throwing out there, just because you don't know which one just might actually be real. Like with mine, with discussing weather. Of course, you have to bring up the HAARP weather control up in Alaska, and whether that's a real thing or not. And I try to throw out lots of conspiracy theory ideas. In my book, the people are sitting around the wood burning stove with the radio, and they're listening to the news report, you know, and then I also have a ham radio operator who was taken over a state, a place on the dial, and so then he puts his spin on that news broadcast and throws out some other stuff, and so it but nothing is set in stone though. Nothing is said. This is what happened. He just throws it out there and lets you decide.
That's kind of cool. I'm a ham radio operator, and that would be very realistic. Not a me per se, but from I don't have the equipment to broadcast like that, but I can see that in the ham radio world. So. Yeah.
I mean, especially somebody, like in my story, he gets on the radio and tells people right at the beginning that first night of what they should be doing in their cars if they're trapped on that freeway. And it was something that the regular broadcast was not doing, was not helping out the people. He's going on and telling them what they need to do in their car to survive the night.
Yeah, it's funny. That's giving me very much like Deathly Hallows Harry Potter vibes, where they have to keep turning on the radio to listen to make sure that like some of their family hasn't died, and they're just hopping from place to place because they're not safe anywhere.
And this is I guess it's a similar situation. The people are moving around, going to getting to a physician for help, things like that.
Yeah, and the calm voice on the air would help a lot, because there's going to be a lot of panicked voices on the air too. So,
right.
Yeah. I wonder if I say this because my kids are right at that generation wise, if this up and coming generation will have the common sense to turn on an AM radio, because that will still be around.
Yeah. And it's also so funny. I've talked to a lot of folks who say that, if the bomb drops, I want it to land right on my head. I don't want to be a survivor. I don't want to be somebody who has to fight the zombies or scratch my existence. I think there's a lot of people who just feel that. Who feel that it's just not worth the fight.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that. Well, I was for a career, I was a paramedic firefighter, and we used to train for horrible situations and things that happen, and we came to a conclusion after about the first 36 hours that there was probably just going to be anarchy, because
and in my situation, like the whole grid isn't down, so it's not like it's some catastrophic Armageddon. Yeah, and even in the people who are in the section where it's down, the radio is telling them, oh, it'll be back up in a week. Just hold tight. Hang on. But it doesn't, and so a situation like that, the folks who would normally give up, they'll still be just kind of hanging on and trying, at least trying a little bit.
It's a famous line: "Trust me, I'm with the government."
Yeah, famous words.
I have a shot for you. You won't get sick. So, yeah, that was what your second book was about. Tell us a little bit about that one. So did the people ever get the grid back on at the end of the book, or what? I guess
no. The grid is still down. It's down for pretty much the whole winter. So like the first book is the first month of the winter, and we're rolling to the second month where there's still some more going on, and but they realize that there's more going on than just the grid being down. There's a coup against the country going on, and and they hear all the time about these local Minuteman militia groups that are doing things, and so they are recruited to join one, and this Minuteman militia has a Huey helicopter at their disposal. So one thing that I did was I volunteered with a Huey helicopter group that flies at air shows, and learned a lot about just the terminology, and also getting some stories from some of the pilots, that sort of thing. Normally, because Hueys, you normally see them over in Vietnam or whatever in a green area. And so I'm like, I need something frozen. And so I found a pilot that had been stationed in Alaska and got some good stories from him. So they joined this Minuteman militia, and they're going to the Ohio River. And of course, sailing has been discussed throughout the whole first book and the second book. So we pretty much had to get to water sometime. And so the Ohio River is where they went. And so then the third book is where we have some battles on the Ohio River. So we have a group that is in Steubenville area that has a Huey helicopter, and then we have another Minuteman militia that is in Indiana that has taken possession of a World War II tank transport. That is a museum piece, which I have also volunteered on that as well to learn some things about it. And they bring it upriver with several battles, because one thing they have to do is they have to liberate the locks of the Ohio River. There are 19 locks. They liberate some locks on the way up through, and then they have a big final battle on Wheeling Island, right there in Wheeling, West Virginia. And the ship, was a ship that was on D-Day. It was there, one of the ones that opens up and the tanks roll out the front on the beach. So it's able to beach itself and then pull itself off the beach. And so I wanted to be able to utilize everything that ship is able to do. So we land on the island, on the foot of the island, and armored vehicles roll out and go to battle, and they pull themselves off the island at the end. It's pretty cool stuff.
That's
certainly
impressive.
Sounds it.
Yeah, and I went there and spent a lot of time on Wheeling Island, learning, just getting a feel for the island and where I would have battles at and all kinds of fun stuff. I'm a method writer, is what I call myself. I like to be there and do it. I like to fly in that helicopter if I'm going to write about it and all that kind of stuff.
Plus, I imagine flying in a helicopter was pretty cool. So
it was great, man.
I gotta be honest.
The first time, the adrenaline rush of that was crazy, and it went down some, the second and third and the fourth time, but that first time, oh man, I don't think my feet touched the ground for a while.
Well, in my career, I was blessed to also be a flight paramedic. And I did some on the helicopter, but it was usually the small bells. But I graduated to the Lears, and there is nothing like, and you're absolutely, there's nothing like that first ride on a Learjet. That first feeling of knowing we're going 250 miles an hour. We're going straight up. I can't imagine what a fighter pilot would feel. This is so cool. So yeah. And, the adrenaline and just the love of it. That was one of the things I fell in love. You were talking about writing. When I wrote a book as a child, and one of the things I wrote in the book was that when I grew up, I wanted to help people, paramedic, I wanted to travel. And then I ended up being a flight paramedic and traveling around the world. That was the greatest job in the whole wide world to me.
Yeah.
You never work a day in your life if you're having fun. That's
right.
So we talked in some of our emails about your love of sailing as well.
Yes. I think I've probably been sailing for a good 20 years. I've vacationed in Key West quite a bit, and while going down there, we would normally charter a boat and go out sailing with a captain at least once or twice while we were there. And we came across one captain that we really worked out well with. And we're going out, and his first mate was her first time on the water, I think. And she was seasick and she was all over the place. And so I just kind of took over and I became the first mate and, dropped the anchor and raised the sails and did all the things he needed me to do. And so by the end of the day, he's saying to me, well, can you come back tomorrow? And so and so whenever we came down there for vacation, and we would go down at least once or twice a year. We had a timeshare down there we were utilizing, and so we would, so whenever I was down there, I was working for him, and that was great. I just had a great time with that. And then I've taken some sailing courses, just to last year I was on a catamaran for 7 days, taking captain's training and written tests every day, and it was really great stuff. And so sailing is where I'm wanting to go. I'm actually going to be looking at some sailboats down in Florida next month. So that's what my retirement home will be, floating. That's what I want.
That would be so cool.
So
Yeah.
you are retiring to become a pirate.
That's right.
Got it.
That's right.
That's
And
what
write on the boat and do that sort of thing. That's my goal. So we are looking at boats, but more so looking at marinas, looking at marina communities that it'll live in, because that'll be the key part of it as well, is having a comfortable place that you call home base.
That sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I have a ham radio friend that does that, and he's in it's not really DC, I guess it's Maryland, and then part of the time, and then the rest of the time of the year he's down south, and wherever he feels like he's retired, so he enjoys it.
Yeah, that's the key to it. You can move around if you're not liking where you're at. But my daughter lives down in Fort Myers. She went to college down there, and she's a nurse down there, and so I'll probably be close to where she's at. But yeah, the Gulf Coast is a nice area.
Oh, all of Florida is beautiful. Might have to learn to speak Russian. We were talking about that earlier.
That's right. I hadn't heard anything about the whole Russian ships off the coast of Key West. That's crazy.
Yeah, supposedly tourists were taking pictures of them, so they couldn't have been too far off the shore. I've only been to Key West once, and I know the beach isn't that big where I was, so they can see. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was down there and I talked to one of the locals, and he said when I moved down here, he'd been there a while. He said the thing that scared me the most was I'm closer to another country than I am a Walmart. So.
Oh yeah.
Or a Dollar General, for that matter.
Yeah, you pretty much have to go up to the mainland for that.
Yeah, and I'd never really thought about it when I planned the trip. I didn't think about it. It looks so much smaller, the road to the islands than it really is. It's a lot longer than I was anticipating.
Yeah, it's about 130 miles going down from the mainland, and yeah, you're bouncing across from island to island, and the drive down is great. You're decompressing the whole way. More ocean you see.
It was funny. There was a wreck way up ahead of us, and I turned the app on the scanner and was listening to the police and fire. And I knew when they called for the helicopter, we were going to be there for a while, and all traffic was stopped. And my friend Ken that was with me first, he got out and just had a cigarette. Well, the next thing you know, we're all out standing on the bridge, looking over the bridge, talking, and just shooting there. It was the guy in front of us. It was a bus that I think took people from the island to the mainland to get supplies or something, like the elderly. So they were trading all kinds of stories. We were hearing really cool stuff. And he's like, yeah, this happens about 3 times a year. You just learn to roll with it. Yeah,
you can't be in a hurry. Yeah, you get behind a slow motor home, you'll be there forever. You know, if you're behind, if there's an accident ahead, just pull off to a restaurant or bar, have happy hour.
Yeah.
I can't stand the heat and humidity, but you guys are seriously making me consider.
Oh, I'll be honest. I can't afford to live in Key West, but I have looked, so I will be honest.
Well, I mean, going up into the Middle Keys is not that bad. You know, up around Marathon or even Key Largo isn't horrible as far as economics. But yeah, Key West is just ridiculous anymore. It's just gotten really ridiculous to try to live there.
I described it because I'd never been there as Gatlinburg without the mountains. If you go to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Gatlinburg used to be a small little rural section of town, and now everything is tourist.
Yeah, it has. And you've lost a lot of the character as well as in all that growth. You know, I think we've been going there since like 92, and yeah, it's so much different, so much more character, so many little mom and pop shops have been turned and became became more commercial.
Part of me worries about that here too, because of where they have officially named Hawks Nest a national park. There's so much stuff moving in. There's so many tourists,
Mm-hmm.
but thankfully and hopefully it stays this way. That, like, the small hometown businesses, that's what people want to support. So
Yeah, I hope it stays that way. I hope it really does. I mean, sad to, I mean, don't mean to get political, but it just seems like mom and pop businesses are really at a bad spot right now. They're really being threatened with the way the economy is turning. Raising the minimum wage and all the different taxes and fees and everything else that's being hit with them that that the big guys are able to handle, but small business is tough.
Speaking as someone who works in the financial field, all the little taxes and extra fees that these small businesses have to pay just to keep up with the times for people is really sad.
Yeah. It's really difficult. It's really difficult. I have some rental property, and so keeping up with all of that, it's really tough. My taxes in the past 4 years have doubled, have completely doubled, and my insurance has really gone up as well. And then you have everything else going on. It's tough.
Well, I read a financial thing just yesterday, I think it was, and my generation, when we go to retire, it's still 10-ish down the road. But they said an average income home, average neighborhood, average everything normal, it's going to be $18,000 a year just to own and run your home, not including your house payment. That's your utilities, your taxes, and maintenance. And I was like, well, that's a lot of money, that's a lot of money. And when you get older, I'm now starting to worry about things like that. And it's like, that's a lot of money.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
yeah. I am concerned more for the next generation. I'm a boomer, so it's I don't have to deal with it for so long. But I'm concerned about my daughter and things she's going to have to deal with.
Hey, I'm pushing right up behind you there, so I'm with you. I told my wife I want to bail on Atlanta as the first moment we can. As soon as she hits retirement, we're out.
It's how to plan that correctly and be able to walk out and do the things you're wanting to do, like buy a retirement home that's a boat.
Yeah. I may take you up on learning to sail one day. That's always been something I wanted to. I've only been out on small boats, and then I guess the largest boat I ever went out, I was a photographer, and I went out on a small Coast Guard boat. It wasn't very large, but it was the biggest boat I'd ever been on. And it was quite cool, so I'd love to learn how to do some stuff. I would love to be out there for at least 24 hours just to see what it's like out at sea, away from the lights, away from everything, just to see.
And sleeping on the water is a great feeling. It really is. Yeah. Yes. And I've looked into a lot of doing the Great Loop. Have you heard of the Great Loop, where you start in the Great Lakes and come down the Illinois River down to the Mississippi and all the way down to New Orleans, and then you loop around Florida, or you cut through the middle of it there in Lake Okeechobee, and then go up the East Coast all the way up to St. Lawrence. And do the loop, and then get back into the Great Lakes again. So that's called the Great Loop. It normally takes about 200 days.
Wow, I've actually never heard of that. That sounds cool.
Yeah. Going down the Mississippi River, I think would be a really cool gig.
Yeah.
Be like Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah, exactly. So, I've got some friends that do the off-roading, and their dream is to go from, there's a road that, well, it's not a single road, but you can go from basically the tip of Peru to the edge of Alaska.
Oh,
and
wow.
that's like, and a lot of it is not just on land, it's also overland. And so that's like their dream. And I was like, I don't know if I like that, but
or even just crossing the United States is quite a project.
yes, it is.
Motorcycle.
The first time I drove across Texas, I thought I'm never going to get out of here. I'm from, I spent a lot of my life in Tennessee, and I thought Tennessee was on. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to get out of Texas.
Yes.
So will your group that you've put under a blizzard and in a monkeypox, and will they make it to civilization, or have you got an exit plan figured out for the series? Or
Yeah. I've gotten as far as I've gotten. If there's going to be a fourth book, I've got some more ideas. At least they're starting to ferment of what I will do next with them. But they've traveled down the Ohio River for a while, and maybe they'll get back home, and maybe that'll be the process of getting back home to the Columbus area and helping to protect the rest of their family. Now that they have served their duty, because their whole process was to protect a VIP and bring him to safety. So that was their mission, and so they've pretty much accomplished their mission. So they might be free to go back home, but the whole process of getting home will be something for them as well.
I'm sure. Well, one of the things, the reason that we're called the Paranormal Guys is we always ask if you've ever had any experience or know anything about ghosts or Bigfoot, or Mothman is Shay's favorite. So,
and Mothman is brought up in my book. As they're going up the river, they're bringing up lots of conspiracy theory stories, and they're talking about some revolutionary battles. There's revolutionary battles on the Ohio River, surprisingly enough, that they got that far west. So yeah, the Mothman story makes an appearance in my book. But let's see. So I do have a story. My home that we've renovated, I'm sitting in here now, is an 1830s home, one of the first homes of the little village I'm in. It's a little Mayberry kind of town with a town square, and our home was the telegraph office, and later became the telephone office with the switchboard operator and stuff like that in our dining room. And through all of this, through the renovation, we gutted the house and everything while living in it, and even jacked it up off the foundation while we were living in it. We never really had any ghosts. We never had any spirits. Nothing happened. Well, there were lots of accidents and things like that, and they could have killed us off if they wanted to, but maybe they liked us. I don't know. So I was talking to one of my neighbors who also was in one of the really old houses of town, and he was talking about his spirit that he has, which is a 9-year-old girl who fell through the ice on the river here near the house, and he's talking about her and I said, "Oh man, we don't have anything like that. I wish we had something like that." And I didn't realize that I was putting out an invitation, because that night we heard the footsteps. We heard her coming in the door downstairs. Our bedroom was up on the 3rd floor of the house at that time, and we heard her coming up the 1st floor steps, and clomping across the floor, and then coming over to the 2nd stairway, and I'm like, oh man, it woke us out of a dead sleep. And so I just I think I grabbed up something and yelled, that we don't want you here, and went over to I stuck my head around the doorway there, and looked down the steps, and there was nothing there, and never heard from her again. But that was an odd one that occurred to us.
So if you want ghosts, I'll give you ghost time.
Yeah. I didn't realize what I was saying.
You can't be taunting the spirits. They'll let you
Yeah.
know.
So she went back home. And I still wonder about the new people who are living in that house now,
if they know the truth.
if they have any issues.
Wow. Well, yeah, you never realize. I guess the old saying, "Be careful what you wish for." But,
Yeah. And that was a long time ago. That was probably back in the '90s. So I still haven't had issues.
At least she
good.
wasn't terribly persistent. She was like,
No.
"Nah, I got you. All right, now shut up."
Right.
She's like, "Oh, let's see what all this construction's been like since I've been over here as a kid." She sounded like she knew her way around. So
Yeah. Yes. So
that's quite interesting.
It's like,
I've
dang,
not
they
heard a
finally-
story like that before.
They finally fixed this squeaky bottom step. Man, that used to be bad.
Well, yeah, it's funny. We talk about my wife. She's even taking up the welcome mat. She's like, I don't want anything welcome here. I don't want any sign outside showing it's friendly. Come in. And she believes that way. I don't know that I necessarily believe that now. Oh, watch, but I don't like to play with it. My thing is, I'd rather go out and find something in the woods than have it come find me in my home.
Yeah, because it's hard to get away from that. And but now I stayed at when I was doing research for the book in Wheeling, I stayed at the McClure Hotel, which is right there in downtown Wheeling, which is an old hotel. I guess it was famous. It had JFK stayed there back in the day, and there had some other presidents and stuff that had stayed in that hotel. It was really old, and I think that there was something. It felt really odd there when I was staying in that hotel.
I'd like to go check out like the Greenbrier.
What's that?
It is. I'm trying to think of what exactly. I think it used to be like some sort of country club. I think it's part restaurant. But they're supposedly underneath the Greenbrier. There's supposedly like a bunker where they'll take like the governor if there's ever any crazy need for safety and all like the important people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to go wander around and be nosy.
Yeah. It'd be cool to see a bunker.
Those places exist. I mean, after 9/11, our country exposed the ones we had at the time. So, I'm sure they've made new ones now. So,
yeah, and it's. I've seen some news reports about some of the billionaires and the elites of the country are now building bunkers. The Facebook guy Zuckerberg, he built a big bunker, and there's some other ones who have built these bunkers, and they're concerned about something.
Yeah. Well, I know we were going through some of my grandparents' stuff, and my cousin found. I never knew what my grandparents did for the government. It was kind of, he just grew up in D.C. and everybody worked for the government. And she had a pass to one of, in case there was a nuclear event, her job, but it was just for her. I was like, wow, thanks, Grant. I don't know if I was around back then, but so they obviously have a continuation plan of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your favorite conspiracy theory? That's one question I always like to ask.
My favorite one. I mean, which one do I think is most realistic?
Just which one is your, you tend to go back to all the time because you really like it?
Oh, well, what about 9/11? Was it an inside job? That has always been a question.
Yeah.
Everybody has just come out and said, oh, whatever that popular science came out and said that's how the buildings fall. that's how they fall. But I don't know. I think elevator shafts wouldn't do that.
Go read Fire Engineering. There was a fire inspector that was like the one that trained everybody in the country. Mm-hmm. He wrote an article in Fire Engineering, and they canceled him. Literally canceled, because he talked about the melting point of steel and how the building was built and blah blah blah. He went into all the technical stuff, and Fire Engineering published it, and then he disappeared. Mm-hmm. I mean, they didn't kill him or anything, but he got canceled. That was, fake science.
Right. Yeah. If it doesn't fit with the narrative, then
bad.
What's always one of the things that, why is everything classified around it?
Right.
National security. We saw it on TV. We saw it on, it unfolded literally in front of our eyes. It wasn't like, Pearl Harbor, where we're getting radio information a day later or something. We're now in that generation or time period where it's here, it's in our face, so. Yeah.
And it was visual. It was something, that was really a thing that brought the country together. It really did. People were really tighter after that, and they're very patriotic, and also standing behind all the first responders and all of that. I mean, it really brought everybody together. It was a very unifying situation, and it's sad to say that a lot of that unifying stuff has been destroyed over the last 20 years, or actually over the last 4 years probably. But yeah.
Agreed. I was in a class on duty that day, and we were in class when the first tower was struck, and we went to break, and we were out in the, we'll call it a TV room, but it was a large fire station that had a conference center, and we watched the second plane hit, and even us as a group, we were like, how could there be two pilots that stupid? It didn't register at first. You know what I'm saying? And we trained for them. Yeah. And then it wasn't 20 minutes later, they were already sending out messages it got down as far as I was in Tennessee, in a rural county. Close the bay doors, lock station down, don't go out for nothing. You're on duty until you're off duty. Well, gee, I didn't sign up for this. So, but I mean, yeah, so it came down real quick, and we figured out that obviously what it was, but that first few minutes we were all kind of just like in a daze. Did this just happen? And like you said, right in front of our eyes. So it's the craziest thing.
Right. And then the whole premise of my story occurred about 2 years later, which was in 2003. We had a power outage that started in Dayton, and it was just some power companies that weren't communicating very well about one power station. One company was losing power, and it lost a bunch of lines, and then finally it all kind of came to a bubble, and it just cascaded across the country and took out the Niagara Falls grid. And that happened in August of 2003. And that was kind of the basis of my story, that somebody figured out how to do that again. But back when it happened in 2003, the news came out immediately and said, "Oh, this is not a terrorist attack. You guys are all worried about it. I'm sure, it's not a terrorist attack." And that calmed a lot of people, and it actually turned it into like a jovial thing in New York City with the power being out. People were out directing traffic because the street lights weren't working, and the little stores were giving out free ice cream before it melted and all that kind of stuff. So in my story, that was the beta test. So that's my conspiracy theory.
Didn't that also happen in the 40s? Or something, the 50s?
65, happened in 65.
Okay. I remember reading about it in some historical thing, and it was like you were talking about. People were out directing traffic. They were helping people in stuck elevators because there was not enough firemen or specialists at that time or police officers around, and so help your neighbor. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that was a big one, and and there's been a lot more happening. I was actually on another podcast not too long ago that the interviewer had done a lot of research about it and power outages, and there's been a lot more recently. People are out, just using guns and shooting up power stations and stuff, bringing down
absolutely. Power. Yeah, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Well, I listened to other podcasts, and I heard one, I don't know if it was last night or recently, talking about the Russians being off the Gulf Coast. He said if you look at the films of people of the era where it was the Cuban Missile Crisis, there's panic buying going on. There was panic in the country. He said, and they had less information than we do now. He said, why is there not panic? He says, because the media is not telling them. The government don't want them to panic because that'll bottom our economy out. So, that made sense when he said that. I was like, that makes a lot of sense because they don't want them in a panic. They can't control the media and what goes out. So,
yeah,
it's interesting.
And they act like they're doing it for our own good.
Yeah, we're children. We're children.
It's all for our own good, Yeah, we don't need to know, but it's something that doesn't follow whatever agenda is being followed.
Yeah, yeah.
If it was some sort of I don't know, racial issue of somebody out there on that submarine, then it would be something on the news.
100% agree with you. That might be a book for when you start your sailing adventures. So. Well, Chris, tell everybody where they can find you. If you got anything upcoming, because I told you to only keep you about an hour, so we're getting close. I wanted to make sure you get time to tell everybody where to get your stuff. And
let's see. Okay, well, my website is author chrisaunderwood.com. All my books are on Amazon. There's another Chris Underwood out there who was on Survivor, so he's a writer, so he's got a bit of a following, but he's more into magic and fantasy. But my book series is called The Cold Winter, and the last book I just put out was The Battle on the Ohio, the third book of the Cold Winter series, and I just released it on June 6th, which is the anniversary of D-Day, and I was on the deck of the ship that the story's about, signing books on that ship, and so I was there.
That's right. You told me you'll be just returning. That's right.
Yeah, returning from that. And then like a week and a half, I'll be at the Dayton Air Show with the helicopter group that I worked with, and I'll be signing books there with them when they're doing their helicopter rides. And then also when the LST 325 is going upriver, it'll be going up to Pittsburgh for the Labor Day River Festival, and I'll be up there signing books as well. So I'll be in Pittsburgh Labor Day weekend, and then the weekend after that in Wheeling. They'll be stopping in at Wheeling the next weekend, and then Marietta the weekend after that. I'll be signing books on the ship then as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll be getting around.
Yeah, you got a lot of miles ahead of you. Well, I wish you luck. Keep in touch with us. Let us know. And you're welcome to come back on the show anytime.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I'm going to be at the Mothman Festival too.
Oh, you'll probably meet Cheyenne. She's going to be there. So I'm going to send her a bunch of stickers and posters and stuff. Is like, here, hand them out. Pass them all around.
Well, I'm trying. Well, the thing is, I still haven't gotten a definite confirmation from them of my booth. So if you know of anything, if you're able to pull any strings, let me know.
I'll go harass Jeff Wamsley about it.
Yes, please get me in there. The thing is, I have another book. I have a murder mystery that I wrote called The Creatures of Holden Beach, which is kind of a Mothman or kind of a story along that line. Here's my cat.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I saw the door open behind you. Well, and it I was like, wait a minute. And then the cat came. Yeah. It's like, all right, it was the cat.
This is Mister. It's too funny.
Yeah, I saw the door open and I thought maybe the little girl's back because I didn't see inside of the door.
No,
He just walked right in.
Daddy.
All right, Chris. Well, keep in touch. I wish you luck, and man, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
All right, yeah. Let's do it again. Maybe after a couple more of my shows and book shows. After I do the air show, maybe do something along that line.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, sounds good to me. All right. Well, Chris, have a wonderful evening, and we will see you soon.
All righty. Sounds great.
All right.
Bye.
That was great. All right. So everybody with WDJY, WRFN, New Mexico, and I think there's some other places. Hang tight. We will be right back as soon as I can figure out what button to push. I always have trouble with the buttons.
Hi, Rich Fields here, and come on down. It's time for the Sportcat Show.
And we're back. All right. So our other guest is backstage. Have you spoke to him already and everything, Cheyenne? Or
yep.
Okay. So because I was looking to make sure we were all ready and good to go. Yep. Let's introduce Chris. Chris, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We can't see you, but that's okay. We can hear you.
My webcam was plugged in. I was just on it too, testing it. So.
Huh. Okay. Are you on Safari or Chrome or?
Chrome.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. Usually it works right away. That was a weird message. I've not seen that. In the middle of that last segment, it came up on my screen, Cheyenne. Your internet is out. I'm thinking my internet can't be out. I'm on it.
No,
so I don't know what that was. Yeah, well, no, it came up on my screen that mine was out, and I'm like, that's not possible. Well, Chris, we got good audio on you, and that's the main part. So tell us a little bit about yourself. We did have. Do we not?
Can you hear us?
Right. Well, I'm not sure what happened to Chris. The boogeyman got him. One of our paranormal got him. Well, it is funny. People say that before they come on the show, everything works great, and then suddenly, boom, nothing. You remember what happened with Meg, and then we had that other guest. So
we gotta quit spilling so many secrets.
I think there was a cool story though about him talking about how he said he wished he had something cool like that happen in that very night.
Yeah.
How would you? I don't know that I'd have been brave enough to look around the doorway.
Nope.
You know me, I prefer the woods. I'm okay out in the woods. Bring it in my house, and I'm under the bed with a rifle. Yeah, I'm under the bed with a rifle. Cat better not open that door. That's as a firefighter. Oh, wait a minute, chat. It's open here. As a firefighter, one of the things we look for at nighttime is hello, uncommon soul. Is if we're going through a house and a bedroom door is locked, that's usually like a telltale sign somebody's definitely in that bedroom, and so I always make sure to do that. Okay, hold on. We've got Chris back. Hello there.
There he is.
Oh. Your audio sounds a little funny. Can you hear us? Okay. We kind of hear you, but it sounds funny.
It sounds alien.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. That's weird.
It makes me think of the Fifth Element for some reason.
Yeah. And Chris uses audio video equipment all the time, so I don't think it's kind of weird that it's happening. Hey, Chris, I'm not laughing at you, but you sound like Alvin from Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Just a smidge.
You sound like you got a voice modifier. I've never had that happen. Chris must have some great paranormal stories because they must be messing with his equipment.
The government doesn't want him to let out his secrets.
No, you're still sounding kind of weird. No.
I heard storm or.
Oh, I wonder if you took a power surge. Because, Chris, this is... Hold on, I'm going to press a button here so you don't think I'm making fun of you. This is what you sound like to us. I would stop this because I'll probably get gigged by YouTube and Facebook, but it's appropriate. I'll probably get gigged for that. So it was worth it. I've done this for several years and I've not had that happen. That was weird. So, all right, Chris, are you with us now?
I mean, the video seems to be working.
Yes, we're good.
You are great. I was not making fun of you, Chris, but that's exactly what you sounded like. So I apologize. All right, Chris. Well, so yeah, Cheyenne said that you had some storms come through. I hope you didn't get a power surge.
I never lost power, but we lost the internet.
Ah, okay. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll start there, and we'll just see where we go.
I'm a writer from Worcester, Massachusetts, of mostly horror fiction. Currently working on a documentary book about comic book stores in New England, and also a TV show about deceased comic book artists and writers.
Oh, wow. All right. So what prompted you to do this?
Which one?
Well, let's start with what got you along the process of writing to start with. You look like in your background you got a lot of comic books, so you must have grown up reading comic books.
I don't have any real story for that. I guess I've always had an imagination.
Okay. All right. Well, that's cool.
I was gonna say your background looks like my fiance's art studio with all the comic books.
Yeah, you must have a love for the comic books. Is what led you on this passion to write about the comic books.
Yeah. I mean, I've been reading comic books since I was like 10 years old.
Okay.
Who's your favorite comic artist?
My favorite what?
Your favorite comic artist.
I don't know. I mean, I have multiple. I don't have a specifically one favorite comic book artist. It's honestly, I think it's multiple people like Mark Bagley or Todd McFarlane or Eric Larson, or John Romita Jr. or John Romita Sr., all of which who have worked on Spider-Man.
Yes.
Gene Cullen, maybe. He was on Tomb of Dracula. And other titles, George Perez, as well. A lot of these people I've met, but I think as I got older, I don't have like a specifically favorite comic book artist. It became like a lot of different artists altogether. So it never was more than just the one.
Well, that's great. Spider-Man was one of my favorites. So when you named all of them, I was like, oh, he's hitting all the topics on Spider-Man there.
I mean, I'm a big fan of like Ken Hunt only because the fact I worked with him on specific projects. Mostly this is coming apart. Our Vlada Dracula Tale project, where he drew all the various artwork for it.
Oh, beautiful.
This just fell off the shelf, so I'm like really concerned about the frame, which sucks because the frame is really nice.
Well, I hope you don't have any paranormal activity going on in your studio there that's causing all these issues.
No, it was me moving something, and then that fell in the middle of the night because I think it was just stacked up against something that was just not going to support its weight anymore.
Gotcha. So, with all the comic book artists you've met, which was the most impressionable on you as far as your artistic stuff?
I mean, any of the heroes that I wanted to have unfortunately passed away before I had a chance to meet them, so it was just a matter of liking their work. I don't have one specific person. It's like a lot of different people, like the ones I mentioned.
Okay. All right. Well, walk us down the path of the creation of your book. When did it start, and what was the process?
We started on Kickstarter in 2020, and it had been long in gestation for a few years prior to that. With are you talking about specifically the Vlada Dracula Tale?
Yeah.
So that was in 2016 with a short comic book, and then we did the graphic novel where this specifically comes from. That piece of artwork there, if the camera is, there we go, without the reflection. But Ken Hunt, he wanted to do something different, more of a prose novel akin to, I don't have a copy of it with me right here, but akin to Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein, and the illustrations he did for that, or like Greg Hildebrandt's Dracula, which has a ton of painted illustrations in it.
I have a copy of that one. And the art in that one is amazing.
So that was like his suggestion, and then we got it done on Kickstarter in October of 2020 with like everything that it takes to run a Kickstarter, which is annoying, and I don't recommend anyone doing Kickstarter. I don't like it.
We ran our first Kickstarter in March or January, February, April, and it was a horror to keep up with.
It's the absolute worst. I don't understand how people can do it like every other month. If they have that much of a dedicated fan base, maybe, sure. But
yeah,
I mean, I would have had to run a Kickstarter like every 5 minutes in order to keep the fan base going with it, and I didn't want to do that. And people are like asking me like the dumbest questions, like, well, "How do you run a Kickstarter?" Like, "Well, what's the ups and downs?" I'm like, it's a horror show. I don't recommend it, and I don't want to recommend you doing it and give you advice on how to do it. So shut up! Stop asking me questions about Kickstarter. Just like create it and run it.
That was like the single longest month in my life.
What I've not dealt with.
Asking, how do I get my movie financed? And I'm like, seriously? Are you asking stupid questions that you ask on the internet?
Go Google it, man. There's probably an answer out there.
There's not.
I've never dealt with
how do I find investors? I'm not the answer for these questions. Go to film fests. That's where you're gonna get those answers. That's what I tell everyone to do. Go to a film fest. That's how you're gonna get your answers to your questions. How do I make my movie? Find 5 friends and make your movie. I mean, I'm working on a TV show that I don't have to do anything but interview people, and then we cut together the audio just to make it sound like awesome with people talking about, dead people like Mark Grunwald.
Well, yeah, and the audio video part is the worst part of having to edit and put it together. I'm clear, so I'm just learning to do that now. So I've never dealt with Kickstarter, so I have no idea what you do.
Yeah, we're not doing Kickstarter for this. This is literally just like me finding an editor that will do it for the cheap or whatever, and that it's got to look like every episode's got to look consistently like the last one. It's like sharp cuts, sharp edits. Can't do it, then move on.
What's a learning process? So, I mean, I just started putting 2 shows on TV in New Mexico and California, 2 of these shows, and editing them, try and get everything together. It's a process. People don't understand that there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes with this stuff.
Now, I will say for our first Kickstarter, it was a good one. We definitely did good, but we were continuously editing the page like all the way up until that last week, because halfway into the start of it, we got a guy that wanted to help us, and he did great, but it was just constantly changing all the way up until like that last week.
Yeah, I know nothing about Kickstarter, so I've never tried to do anything or fund anything like that, so no.
So I'll assume you doing the book on the deceased artists was based on your love for those deceased artists?
This is not that's not a book. That's like that is a media project. I can't even describe what it is right now because it's evolving. So it's it could be a bunch of short films. It could be like a TV show. I don't know. Just we're getting into so much material on who we've interviewed that it's becoming bigger than I was expecting it to be.
Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Yeah. Besides for the working part of it.
Seems like it would have its ups and downs, but pretty awesome that, it's evolved past what you thought it was going to.
When you're doing your research, go ahead. I'm sorry, Chris.
I said all I was going to say was we'll have to wait and see what happens with everything that we've done so far.
Well, I was going to ask, when you're doing your research to get people together to interview and stuff, what is your style of interviewing someone as far as you research your background and interview them, or
are you talking about for this particular project?
Yes.
I mean, they already know why they're coming on, so it's just I don't ask them questions. I'm just like, just talk about the person, and then that's it. Because I'm not involved, you're never gonna hear my voice. You're never gonna see me on camera. I'm just like, just talk about something you know about them. You knew them personally. You were a fan. You worked with them. That's it. And then I just let them talk, and then I chop it up later on.
Okay.
I don't have anything specific to ask them because they already know the person intimately enough that I don't need to ask questions. I just be like, talk about this. What did Bernie work on? What was he famous for? Why did you work with him? I don't feel the need to ask any questions because, again, I'm not Q&Aing them about the person. It's just like they know why they're talking to me, so that they're just like, where do you want me to start? And I'm just like, just talk about whatever you want.
There you go. It's kind of old school journalism. I mean, really.
I don't want to ask them questions because I'm not. Again, the questions won't be. You will never hear the questions.
Yeah,
so
just the facts. So, how many projects do you got going on currently? Sounds like you got quite a few.
I mean, the documentary about the TV show. The documentary about the dead comic book artists and writers, and then the comic book store documentary. That's it.
Okay.
I have a comic book I'm working on, but it's nowhere near in any kind of development that I want to talk about yet.
Understandable.
Because it's I don't know when it's going to get finished. So I just got page 8 of it now. So maybe if I'm halfway done, I'll finally be like, all right, this is what's happening.
Well, from what I understand, comic books are the hardest thing to write because you have to literally build each scene. You're doing the movie set in your mind and then putting it into a panel. So,
well, I wrote this comic book 6 years ago, so the script's just been sitting there waiting for the correct artist that I feel like is competent enough to do it, and the less direction I need to give them because the script is their instructions. If they have to ask me 30 million questions about it, it's like, okay, we're not going to be able to work together because I wrote you your instructions. All you need to do is just show me what you've drawn so I can approve it and then move on.
Yeah,
I'm very much letting people like work on their own, but just don't like make me micromanage what you're doing because you're not going to like it, especially if there's something in print for you to read that gave you the instructions. Now, if obviously I wrote something that doesn't make any sense because it's grammar-wise, that's fine. Call me on it. That's fine. I'm not afraid to be like, oh, I screwed that up. But otherwise, it's like, just show me the page of the artwork when you're about to start inking.
And
Ken knew how to do... Ooh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Ken knew how to do what he needed to do just because we worked together so close on Vlada for the beginning of everything.
Well, you guys have that good working relationship where, you know, he knows.
Well, we were friends for a number of years, so that was helpful. Yeah. So when he did this, he knew, you know, what he needed to do. And I gave him 12 images I wanted drawn, and he just kind of picked the other 12. So.
Yeah, it's very hard to find somebody that, you know, you mesh with and don't have to micromanage like that.
Right. I don't like micromanaging people just because I'm going to sound like an asshole if I have to tell you what to do.
And
yes.
it's very understandable. You know, I've had to be back and forth with the dealings on that myself, so I very much get it.
I'm also not an artist as much as I'm a writer.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure people have the freedom and ability to do what they need to do, especially if they've been an artist for a while. Mm-hmm. I paint once in a while. I don't have anything I can paint, anything here to show you what I painted. Nope, I don't. Some of it's hanging up in Man Ray, a club in Boston. Some just might be buried in the other room, but what I paint is very simplistic compared to like what Ken drew. So,
yeah.
Is the painting more of something you'd want to pursue, or more just like a hobby?
I think right now it's just a hobby. I haven't painted anything in a few weeks, but I've also been busy, and I was on vacation in Hawaii, so I just only have been back in the real world for the last couple weeks, and really trying to get the book about the comic book stores in New England done, which is turned into less like a biography book and more like a analysis of businesses that I wasn't intending it to be.
So it's just comic books that are in Massachusetts, or is this like
comic book stores?
Yeah, but so it's like United States wise.
New England.
Okay. Like, so is it more?
Somebody already wrote that book.
What was it?
Somebody already wrote that book about the comic book stores of the United States.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it came out in 2017 by Shirani. He's a Wall Street journalist, business journalist. So he wrote and he's a comic fan. So he wrote a book about the history of the comic book store in America, which goes back to possibly the 70s, possibly the 60s. But it covers up to about 2017, and it was like the inspiration for me to write the book about the ones in New England. So about being like worrying about, am I writing the same book he wrote? Could this be plagiarism? No, his was all about America. Mine's just about 6 states.
Are you personally visiting each one, or just?
No, there's nothing to do that.
That's a lot. Yeah, that'll take you a long time.
I mean, if I see one, I'll stop by, but I'm not going out of my way to go to every single one of these stores. And I know some people are just like, "Oh, you should," and I'm just like, "Yeah, you should," because gas is not what you think it is. So don't make suggestions of things you're not going to do yourself.
So is this just kind of like an analysis of each store, or more of like a, like comic book stores are on the rise for closing, or what do you consider it?
It's just about their history.
The history of each one, or the history in general?
It's about the store's
Of
history.
Okay, yeah, that's what I
Of
was getting at.
each of the ones in New England is what he's saying. I get it now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, you read a lot of places that they say the comic book stores are dying, the mom and pop stores are dying. That's the
Who
big.
keeps saying that?
I've read it in several articles. So I've
mean,
read that Marvel's trying to kill.
We have 100 comic book stores in New England.
Well,
In Atlanta, I have 2. Believe that or not.
It's very lucky that there are that many in New England, because it's dying a lot of other places. I mean, I think there's been a resurgence to a point, but around like our neck of the woods, it has died down a lot.
I mean, there was like 3 stores that have closed since I started that I interviewed, but like one because of medical related reasons, not COVID, not finances. One was because of finances, and one was because they got a huge buyout from another store. Okay. They didn't need to go out of business. They were finding their own. The money was just too good to pass up for their entire stock and customer base. So they sold. Just be like, we'd be stupid not to take this offer.
Well, I know when I was in East Tennessee in Knoxville, there was 3 or 4 stores, and that was when I left there in 2002, and I've come to Atlanta and there's 2. I mean, 2. I mean, there may be some smaller ones I don't know about, but there's basically 2 that you go to in Atlanta area, so it's kind of a niche market anymore.
I think every state is different. Surprising to hear that about Atlanta. At least I knew at least 5 stores, one of which thrives on being the store closest to where they film The Walking Dead, as well as most of the Marvel films.
Yes, that's in the South Side. Yes.
So that was, plus Atlanta is also the home of Dragon Con.
Mm-hmm. You're correct. Yeah, it's taken over at least a week a year. Well, I guess the part of Atlanta I'm familiar with is most north and east side of Atlanta, and I've went as far as into downtown. I've been to the store in the South Side, like it, but yeah, there's very few. They did just open they took an old Big Lots and they gutted it, and they made like little tiny antique malls in it, and they've invited people in only on weekends to come in, and they've done everything from Dungeons and Dragons to comic books to, I don't even know, some of these new games, the card games and stuff. Now that is getting more popular in the area.
It's funny, we have one of those like that closer down home. Bottom is all, it's a big space, but the whole bottom half is all antique store. But then once you make your way in and go upstairs, that's where they've got the comic book store.
If you read Tim Seeley's post on Twitter, Tim Seeley is the creator of Hack Slash. He's Money Shot. He's currently writing. His current miniseries is Masters of the Universe: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Dark Horse and IDW, and he makes a point every single time, and I 100% believed him to be 100% correct. I mean, he's been working in the comic book industry for 25 years, and he's had multiple successes. Again, currently his big success is writers of like most of the Masters of the Universe comics recently, which have been pretty big hits for Dark Horse. And Hack Slash is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. Very niche, but he just got picked up. One of his other comic books, Revival, I think it's called, just got picked up for a TV series for the first time. Something Hack Slash has failed to do multiple times, which we've had him on the podcast I do, Hack's Goth Girl Horror, to talk about. But the reason I bring him up is he said that whenever he hears about like comic book stores are dying and comic books are dying, he's like, "You're full of crap and not actually doing your research. All you're doing is just basically clickbaiting from CBR or something like that, or some website that hardly ever covers comic books." And he's like, "That can't be dying because Kickstarter is killing it with comic books right now. Marvel and DC sales right now are actually a lot higher. They're just not high in stores that aren't like just into promoting them whatsoever." And he's like, yeah, there are comic book companies that try and fail and go out of business because of the fact they get so full of, they just keep repeating the same mistakes from the 90s. They get so full of greed because they pump out a couple of quality books or whatever that make the heads of the company millions of dollars in sales eventually. Not all at once. Not every book is a Youngblood #1, a Spawn #1, like the Image comic days of 1992, but over the several months or whatever, when they put out like a quality book or whatever, they'll be in the millions in sales over several books. But he said the reason they fail is mostly because of the fact that they get greedy and they forget to pay people, and then they continue getting into debt, and then their company just dies. There's a reason Omni Press is still in business after all these years. They came out of the gate with the #1 hit, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and it made them a lot of money, and a TV series and a cartoon series, or not cartoon series, the movie, and then eventually the cartoon series many years later. But that Scott Pilgrim comic book still sells for them, on top of everything else that they put out, like Rick and Morty and things like that,
Well, the only main issue I think that a lot of artists have with the Oni right now is that they will only accept work if you come to them with like a fully completed series.
Yeah, because they don't want to put you together with a team. They want to publish you, and everyone's adopted Image's like moniker of you own it, but we were going to publish it, and you have to sign a contract for the next 5 years that we're going to publish it, which is fine because they have a bit of a more marketing arm than you will. But you own it. You will own it. It's just if the company goes out of business, you're going to deal with the red tape. But that's, again, not something you sign a contract worrying about as much. Go with a company that obviously has something going for it. I've pitched a couple places. I can't remember the name, but it's called Sumerian or something like that. They're a very small company, but they have big is relative. They have somewhat well-known IPs that they publish, like The Fog and American Psycho and Basic Instinct, and no one's making movies about these things right now. I mean, I know there's American Psycho remake supposedly in the works, but The Fog, nobody's doing anything with The Fog. You can't do anything with The Fog. It's a one-trick pony. There's no merchandise to do with The Fog. So to publish a comic book that's set like maybe 20 years later is something that they're doing. Basic Instinct, I didn't read that one yet, but they make a point like saying, we are going to, besides an independent story here and there, we're going to be publishing media-related tie-ins to movies and TV shows. And we're looking for also new ideas. Now, whether or not they can get the license for these things sometimes is something else. But obviously, they're not going after Freddy, Jason, and Michael, and Chucky, and things like that, which probably cost millions of dollars to get the IP to make a comic book for, if those companies are interested in doing it. But they're going after Basic Instinct, American Psycho, something that probably costs them a few $1,000s to get the IP for.
I like the idea that they're putting out those movies into graphic novels.
I mean, then no one's going to go after Alien Predator because Marvel owns Alien Predator, because Disney owns Marvel and the Fox and things like that.
To find out that Marvel owns Ultraman. I just found that out recently.
They own the North American licensing rights to Ultraman. Ultraman's owned by Toho Studios.
Okay, so they only got rights to here.
Comic books. Just like they had rights to publish Conan for 5 minutes, and then Conan went to Titan Comics. Titan Comics is the UK publishing company that does Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Yeah, because I saw they were actually going to put something out with Ultraman recently, and I was like,
yeah, they have Ultraman the Avengers coming out soon, which is fine. I'm not a big enough Ultraman fan to really want to dive into that. But I saw that too, and I was like, oh, look at that.
That would be something that Travis would like to get his paws on.
Yeah, every I can remember coming home from school and Ultraman was on TV. So yeah, I was kind of glad to see that. I was looking forward to that one. So it's on my pre-order list. Well, but there's also people in the industry like Kirkman. Everything that man touches turns to gold. You know.
Yeah, but he's not without his.
Oh, he's had failures too. Yes. So,
yeah, either failures or like lawsuits. Tony Moore, the original artist on The Walking Dead, sued the hell out of him.
Yep.
Because he was like, "Yeah, I created, according to the Image Bible. In the Image Bible, I created The Walking Dead with you."
Yeah. Yeah.
So for the first 6 issues,
your point.
The first 6 issues of The Walking Dead became the Bible for the first season, which was the merchandising. I mean, I met Tony at a con, and he couldn't talk about it at all. But I asked him, I was like, "I heard there was a big blowout between you and Robert Kirkman." And he goes, "Yeah, it's over though. I got what I needed out of it," which means he got his payday from the massive amount of merchandising that his art was used for. Notice the artwork started shifting and became the other artist.
Yes, I did. Well, and you said a key thing there: the merchandise, and then down the road, movies and TV shows and stuff. So
I have the first volume of The Walking Dead right here. I don't see it. Maybe I packed it up in a box or something. Oh.
Travis had it for years, for quite a while, and then early 2000s he ended up selling them, and he's like, "God, I've been kicking myself for doing that for years."
Yeah, and Kirkman's riding high still with Walking Dead spinoff shows. One is filming here in Worcester right now. The whatever the show's called with the girl and the guy who killed her husband, whatever that team is. Maggie and Nero's show, which is hilarious because he bashed Glenn's brains in with a baseball bat. But they have a team up show. They're on the road.
Okay, I got you. All right, yeah, I got you.
Which, by the way, they were those two actors were Martha and Thomas Wayne in Batman versus Superman.
I know.
So very unusual, but I digress. The Robert Kirkman thing continues because of his massive success. I mean, it's outselling Batman and Spider-Man comics. The massive success of the Energon universe.
Yes, the Transformer world. Yes,
the Transformer, G.I. Joe, and Void Rivals.
Yes,
which is like slowly building to whatever the storyline is they're building to. I mean, the Void Rivals newest issue came out, and it was like it ends with like the Quintessons, and a name is said, and the Quintessons get all freaked out or whatever, and they're like, and like G.I. Joe ends or whatever, and Cobra Law is coming to Cybertron, and like the next series starts or whatever, introducing the Arishnikaj clan, and then over in Transformers they've got Megatron on a warpath to find Starscream and Optimus Prime. It's like every issue I just gobble up immediately.
Me too. Me too. I was so excited to see Kirkman get the world, and even with the G.I. Joe. I was never a big G.I. Joe. I was always the Transformers growing up. That was mine. So I loved them.
The last thing I wanted to talk about was the newest comic book I did, which I had messaged you guys about, was my first like adult themed comic book, only because it does have sex and violence in it and nudity, called Detective Simona. It's basically a private investigator that's a succubus. I don't have a copy here to show you, but copies of it are available on my Etsy store.
Okay, well, tell us all about it, because yes, we're good with that. That sounds.
Oh, like I just did.
Oh, well, that was it. Okay, I thought
it's a private detective that's a succubus.
Okay. All right. Well, you were suckering me in. I wanted more.
That's what I want to promote it as, just to get people to go out to come over and buy it from either a local comic book store here in New England or over on my Etsy store.
Okay,
but it's rated R, so it is mature content. There's 2 pages of like nudity and sex in the end.
It happens. That reminds me, I was going to ask, and you'd be a perfect one to ask. The comic book industry there for a period of time had to go through the ratings where they had to put the sticker on there that it was approved. That's gone, isn't it? They don't have to do that
Gone
anymore.
for 24 years.
Okay, so that, because I was doing some research for a radio show, and I come across the Tipper Gore, the whole at the beginning of it, and I was like, I don't remember seeing any recently. So yeah, so did it just, the industry took care of itself, or did the government just stop caring? Or
The government never cared. The government
It was-
hasn't cared since the 1950s.
It was Tipper Gore getting her panties in a bunch because of the music making
yes.
the kids do bad things, and I'm
Oh
sure
yeah, that had
carried
nothing to do with
over
the comic book
into-
industry.
Well, she was
The comic book industry created a governing body for themselves, kind of like the NFL has like all the owners. They're all part of a committee, and they appoint a guy to be the head of their committee, which is that guy everyone hates in the NFL. I should know his name because we just had our Hall of Fame ceremony for Tom Brady tonight.
talking about Goodell.
Yeah, so that guy. So the comic book industry had the same thing. All the owners, Marvel, DC, Mad Magazine, whoever Mad Magazine's original owner was before DC bought them out, Archie. I don't even know who else or whatever at the time because I don't even know what comic book companies existed way back when, before a lot of them imploded. Then in the 90s, it became very lax when Image came out, and Spawn was just like, like violence and gore and a lot of partial nudity and things. And Savage Dragon had like tons of sex, and like Savage Dragon today is not a comic book for children whatsoever. I mean, it was a funny book and a satire on the comic book industry with its own storyline, which is great. But today, Savage Dragon has like full-on XXX pornographic images in the comic book. And they just rate it as a mature comic.
Wow. Well, I haven't read any of those. Maybe I need to.
Savage Dragon was Eric Larson, who used to draw Spider-Man. He's the only guy at Image Comics still doing his own comic book since day one. Of course, in the most recent issue, he had to put into the letters page, he's published 8 issues in 2 years, and he feels really bad about it.
Well, I would too. All right. Well, how do you feel about the state of the future for comic books? Do you think it's going because of the Marvel Universe and DC movies? Do you think that's pushing it further ahead, or do you think it's gonna?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to analyze what's coming. I just know how to like think about like I get asked that question a lot by people who don't read comic books, and then I don't know how to answer it. Because they're like, oh, well, the Marvel Avengers made like $2 billion like 5 years ago, by the way. 5 years ago, the Avengers made $2 billion. And I was like, great, nobody saw $2 billion in the comic book stores.
No, they didn't. No, absolutely not.
So until like James Gunn can come along and say, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to like run ads for comic book stores at the end of the movies to promote like where to go find Superman or something like that. You have your chance to get your ad into our film in some way. Nobody can answer how the hell do you get the two to connect. And there's thousands of probably YouTube channels out there that probably have broken it down. I don't know.
I was just asking your opinion on it, what you thought of it, but
I don't have one because I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I can get along with that.
Yeah, I just don't have there's just no way of knowing because of everything that's constantly changing.
It could all fall
I don't even know if I
apart,
knew
who
like
knows?
I don't even know if I knew like 10 years ago. I mean, every 5 minutes it's like an up and down, but I have both positive and negative side of like people talking to me about how the comic book industry is.
Yeah, it's in flux.
Right. And since I don't exactly work in the comic book industry as much as some of the retailers do, I mean, putting out an independent book is not necessarily working in the comic book industry. There's no way for me to analyze it until I'm actually done a lot of research, and I'm too busy doing research on projects about dead comic book artists and writers.
Gotcha. All right. Well, one question, we don't want to keep anybody longer than we ask initially, that I always like to ask. In any of your experiences, have you ever had any type of paranormal experience? Any type of seeing a ghost, Bigfoot, anything like that?
For somebody who does a podcast called Supernatural Creatures and Lore, I always get asked this, and I go, I don't believe in the paranormal. I mean, I find it funny and fascinating. I'm not going to be arrogant to say we're the only living creatures on planet Earth in the entire galaxy, but I've gone to enough spook hauntings that I'm just like, so what was supposed to happen? Was I supposed to see something?
Okay. Well, no, and that's why the show is broken up. Besides for the fact that I'm a paramedic, it's para or normal, because sometimes we agree on things, sometimes we don't. You know, I'm not a ghost person. I prefer to be out in the woods looking for big furry creatures, because, well, I just like being out in the woods for, fun. But a lot of people that we've talked to have had some experience. The gentleman before you said that his neighbor had a ghost, and he says, "Oh, I wish I had something like that." And the next night, he had something happen at his house. So, I mean,
the podcast I do, Supernatural Creatures and Lore, when people hear about it, they're like, "Oh, you must believe in the paranormal," or "How can you talk about this stuff in the podcast?" My co-host, I think she does it as a lark or whatever to get under my skin, where she's just like, "I believe in ghosts and this, that, the other thing," even though she knows I don't. The show mostly the show is all about the monsters that Sam and Dean Winchester fought on the TV series Supernatural. And then we break down like where their real life lore and stuff comes from. But in almost every episode, I say I don't believe in ghosts, and I think it's nonsense. And that might be why our iTunes ratings are the way they are sometimes.
Well, I mean, now with the iTunes ratings, you can't control them. One day they're great, the next day they're.
But I think it's like going to see a really crappy movie and not. It's like not going to see a crappy movie, which based on what you see in the trailer, you're like, God, this looks like garbage. Let's use The Crow for an example. I mean, Jesus Christ, how hard is it to get that formula right? But I've watched that trailer twice now, and I'm like, this is just looks like this is gonna fail. This is gonna be a failure. If Furiosa, everyone can see the trailer and be like, oh my God, that doesn't make any money. The Crow is gonna come along, this remake. But again, I'll go see it to fully back up what I saw in the trailer to be like, wow, is exactly what I thought about in the trailer. This is terrible. I will go to a haunt that someone tells me is a haunt, and then I'm like, what was I supposed to experience?
Have you ever went and somebody else in your group experienced something and you were like, no way?
I mean, some people have that little device, the PKE meter.
Oh yeah, that goes off when it detects the energy or what. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
right.
That could be your cell phone. I mean, if you want to get technical. So I don't put much EMF detector. I don't put much faith in the EMF detectors.
I went to Lizzie Borden's cafe, not Lizzie Borden's Borden Bread and Breakfast, the bread and breakfast, the cafe and in Fall River. That was hilarious, only because of the fact that there's a whole other story that happened there that has nothing to do with Lizzie Borden, but it has to do with 40 years ago, before Lizzie Borden was even born, about her aunt killing her daughters and her niece. And that's becoming like a bigger story now. But somebody was there. They had the little EMF thing or whatever. And behind me, there was a door. They're all like listening to the owners, like Tail, Joe, this really nice guy who's going to come on my radio show. And then I just do one of these. And everyone jumped in the room.
I probably would have been one of the ones jumping. That's great. Yeah,
okay, do you approve or not? Look on your faces like, how dare I?
Yeah, well, you're never gonna, I don't think we're ever going to get any hard evidence that there is a spirit or a ghost. I mean, I don't know how science would even quantify it if we did. So
we'd have to capture one in like a thing and be like, look, it's a ghost, like in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like Bigfoot. They want a body, so somebody pointed out to me, if you find Bigfoot and you bring a body in, and they're going to say, okay, well, that's a male. Now we need to see a female. Well, now when you see babies, see how they grow, and it's like it would be a never-ending process for biology and scientists to document and put together its real existence. You're just not going to do it.
Didn't the Bigfoot video from the 70s get completely debunked many years ago? Like that was a guy in a costume, right? Okay.
Yeah. There's people who say it is, people who say it isn't. So
there was
because they supposedly brought in a body, but it was like a stuffed suit that they brought in.
Rue Morgue, whatever the 20th anniversary of that video was, I was working at Barnes and Noble at the time, and I remember it was on the cover of Rue Morgue, 20th anniversary of 2009. Okay, maybe 30th anniversary because it was the 70s, right? So maybe it was 30th anniversary. So 30th anniversary of that video, and I read the article. It was like 2 pages, and they talk about like, so the truth is these 2 guys, and so on and so forth. And that's when I found out that video was completely false, even though it had been debunked by like Unsolved Mysteries like years ago. I found that article fascinating in again, Rue Morgue, the Canadian horror magazine, which is still being published today, shockingly.
It's a very good magazine.
Yeah, see, horror is not my genre. I'm more the superhero type thing. So Batman, Spider-Man. I'm a Transformers geek, I admit it.
It's got to be the longest running horror magazine because Fangoria has like stopped and go and stopped and go. And I don't even know if the current version of Fangoria is even still happening right now because I don't hear anyone talk about it. But I still see Rue Morgue on the shelves when I go to a Barnes & Noble. And I think it's also the longest running magazine run by a woman too.
Really? Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it was started by a woman. I almost worked for her for like 5 minutes. We were trying to start a podcast in the early days of podcasting, and we just could not get it together. But I ended up having her on my show, just my regular radio show. So, but we couldn't get the podcasting together. Like it just was not. This was like 2008. So. And they've gotten it together since because Rue Morgue has a pretty successful podcast. But at the time, it was an absolute flippant disaster. I could not keep up. I could not stick with the technical malfunctions like the ones that we had tonight were.
Yeah, well, so that's you can't detect them. 2 weeks ago, we had a guest that just completely bailed on me because it fell apart. I was like,
I've had to leave my own podcast that I'm a podcast team that I'm part of because the signal error completely crapped out, whatever.
It happens. Yeah, it happens. And when you're live, you can't control it. So
no, that's what made me feel really bad about being late. So that's why I reached out to her. I was just like, listen, this is what's happening. So
well, I appreciate it. Yeah.
We get it.
Well, if you back at the beginning of spring, we had a lady go, an author. She's like, I gotta go. There's a tornado warning, and I hear it. I was like, go. So you never know on live TV or radio or TV what you're going to get.
Speaking of terrible movies that should not be made, Twisters.
We interviewed a guy from that, actually. So, yes.
I'm sorry, but that's not... I'm not sorry, but there's no Bill Pullman. There's no Bill Paxton. There's no Twisters.
Yeah, Bill Paxton, yeah.
They should have made that movie 20... They should have made that movie 20 years ago, like when he was still alive.
Okay. Well, now, have you give Top Gun a pass, though?
No, I saw Top Gun, but Tom Cruise came back for Top Gun, too.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and he's supposedly coming back for another one. Good Lord,
we'll see if that gets made. I mean, he's having problems with the next Mission Impossible movie. So the VFX people are not like just sitting down and letting it be, letting Hollywood walk over them anymore. This is why... Notice there's no Spider-Man sequels animated film on the block for 24 or 25 yet.
Yep, I have noticed that.
They are not on the block for 25 Sony releases, but Sony's got bigger things. They just bought the Alamo Drafthouse, so hopefully this will turn things around for them.
Hope so.
Well,
they're now the Sony Alamo Drafthouse.
Hopefully Scientology just puts a pillow over Tom Cruise's head and says, no, you're staying here now.
Hopefully he wakes up and realizes how much of a farce Scientology is.
Fingers crossed.
Sorry to all your Scientology listeners out there.
And that's a whole podcast in itself.
As well as your paranormal. So I pissed off your Paranormal Activity and your Scientologist people.
I don't know if I got any Scientology people. No, we have plenty of people on both sides. Now, you may have upset the Bigfoot world, but they're used to it.
I mean, I hang out with people who claim to be vampires or energy vampires. You know, I don't.
Could you get us a vampire? Because we want to talk to a vampire.
Ooh, yeah.
Maybe.
Pretty please.
That's every time I've reached out, somebody says they're a vampire. They either ghost me or they just ignore me or something. So I begin to believe they're full of poo. So.
I mean, I've dated a couple, so maybe that's soured the relationship. I don't know. Well, everything. Just so we're aware, everything was consensual and everything was on the up and up. And then we reunited and everything's fine according to them, because I ran into some of them recently. So,
hey, I'll take a referral.
All the sucking was consensual.
You went there.
I'm not.
You don't have to.
I'm not. See what else do I have here?
I just read an article that they have found from original. You'll have to quote me on this.
These are all vampires, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
This is 3 shelves of vampire books. This will be the last thing I show you before I have to go. Unfortunately, it's 11 o'clock here.
Yeah.
That's, by the way, that Coke bottle, that's Blade's Coke bottle from the Marvel lineup of Coke bottles and cans that are happening right now. When I found out Blade has a Coke bottle, I was like, well, I need that for the collection.
I have to have it.
It's funny how we do that. Yeah, I've got plenty of things like that. So I did a thing on my other radio show, and we're trying. I don't remember. You all can educate me because I only did a 25-second blurb on it. But the original Count Dracula, the person they thought that was the original Count. Oh, that's great. They have now pulled something off of one of his letters that's blood, sweat, and saliva, and they think that he was actually a vegan. I'm just telling you, it was an article I read. It was enough to get me through 2 songs. Okay. My buffer between 2 songs. That was what it was.
So if you want to know anything about like Dracula or Bram Stoker, go see this guy. Not him. Go see him. Right where I'm pointing. His Dave Carr Stoker. He's Bram Stoker's great grandnephew.
Okay.
So his grandfather was Bram Stoker's brother.
Okay.
So he's like the foremost expert on.
Well, you'll have to see if you can refer us to a vampire. All right, man.
I will try. I cannot make any promises. They do not like. Here's the problem. And it has to do with the both of you. It's not a vampire show. And it's not a gothic radio show either. It's not a podcast. And one thing I've noticed with any of these vampires that do interviews, and they came on my show because they carry my book. I'm the only fictitious book in their store. Everything else is like the other book I just showed you, real world vampire, stuff. A lot of times I've noticed they don't do interviews with the muggles, if you want to call it. That's the Harry Potter word for like the normal people.
I resent that. I am not a muggle. Glenn is a muggle.
I don't know what a muggle is, so I'll take it. So I've been called much worse, I'm sure.
But you get what I mean, though. They have like a very much like a certain type of like show they'll do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not like an insult to anyone that doesn't do their specific kind of show, but I get it because I've watched their interviews and they did mine twice because I cater to that audience. But honestly, I don't see them doing like C-SPAN or like local New England whatever. The Temple of Satan owner, he'll do Good Morning America in New England because he loves the free press. Great for Halloween time, and he's been on whatever the Good Morning America New England show is or whatever. The way he looks and everything, he's got like a two-faced kind of scarred up looking face and everything, and complete gentleman, but but that's local New England. He's not going to go on like Stephen Colbert's show.
Sure. And we're more in our areas. We're more popular in the South. That's where our numbers are.
Correct. So the one thing I've noticed with like anyone from the community, Witches, yeah, they'll do all sorts of talk shows, I've noticed. But vampires, it's that like they just don't want to be made fun of.
Yeah, well,
It's
I
understandable.
won't make fun of you. I just got to
I'm not saying you will.
No.
It's just you definitely look at the type of interviews they do, and it just they're very
They're not going to take that risk that it could turn into.
Sure.
correct. So
I
don't
respect
take
that.
it offensively. It's just like even recommending it would be like a very hard sell.
Okay.
Understandable.
Well, I'm good with that.
That's not to say you can't probably find somebody that would do it. I'm just the ones I know, very hard sell.
I just haven't found anyone to. Well, I can't. Also, and I don't understand this. It's hard to get people that are Norse, pagan. They don't want to come out. Somebody that's a common practitioner, like a.
I find that to be very easy, but again, I don't do other than my Spider-Man podcast. I have a few podcasts, and I don't want to list them all because it feels like I over bloating it a little bit. But other than the Spider-Man podcast I do, most of my shows are horror related or adjacent. But I do a show called Radio of Horror on Sunday nights, and it's an actual live broadcast radio show, in a studio. So when I reach out to someone to be like, hey, I want you on the show. This is what we've done. These are the interviews we've had, whether they be fictitious or real, you know what I mean? And I get most of the time, I get a yes, or I get a like, I'm so busy. Robert Kurtzman and I are trying to have, not Kirkman, Robert Kurtzman of KMBFX Studio. I've been trying to have him on the show since I met him at the Boston Sci-Fi Film Fest. But his partner has now unfortunately shot me down to November. And I'm just like, ugh. So, but she's just like, keep trying. And I'm like,
I'll be back.
So, but unfortunately, I have to go.
Yes, sir. I know we didn't want to keep you late. So everybody can find you at your Etsy store.
Yes, and again, I'm very sorry for being late. It's just the way the storms were and the way my area is. It's if you understand, that was me not putting stuff back the way it's supposed to be, and then of course the shelf collapses.
You have upset them.
Yes, I have.
If something bumps you on the head, you might believe.
What was I saying?
Your Etsy store.
Yeah, so my Etsy store is if you look up Vlada a Dracula Tale on Etsy, that's I think the Etsy store. But that's where you'll find most of my books, like almost all my books, comics. The comic book store book, the New England comic book stores, will be published by Bear Manor Media. I recommend everyone go to Bear Manor Media. They only publish nonfiction biography documentary books. You want a book about the making of Jaws 2? Not Jaws, but Jaws 2? They have a book. You want a complete episode guide for the Incredible Hulk TV show? They have that. Or Friday the 13th. Or making of behind the scenes of Christine from the perspective of one of the people that was there every day, but they may not have been like one of the head honchos of the movie. They were just like, second unit producer or something like that. But they are going to be publishing the New England comic book stores because they've also published the New England Horror Filmmakers, which is my first documentary book about independent horror filmmakers in New England. Very roughly done. It was my first experiment in a documentary book, so it only took 12 years to put it together because I kept sitting on it waiting for someone to say yes, I'll publish that.
I.e. judge it very harshly.
I judge my own books very harshly too because I was an idiot and should have gotten published earlier, but I just kept like, oh, I'm just going to put this over here and then I'll get back to it.
Yeah, then you get old. I get it. Well, I'm going to be traveling up in your neck of the woods in probably about 2 months. So I'm going to be trying to find some comic book stores. So I might put you up for some advice. So.
They are, again, they're everywhere here in New England. Massachusetts has so many for such a small thing.
My son moved to Vermont, so we're going to be going to Vermont.
Vermont has 4, one of which is owned by a recluse that supposedly owns every copy of every DC comic of the 60s and 50s, 60s, and 70s. Okay, but when you ask them about this collection at the store, they shut you down pretty hard.
Okay.
Go find out what's going on.
I called them twice for an interview for my book, and he's on one of the employees has hung on the phone up on me.
Oh wow! All right.
Yeah.
I might.
So I'm just
Yeah,
going to write in the book, there's a rumor in Vermont, there's a woman that blah, 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 blah. I'm not naming a name, and I'm not naming the name of the store, so nobody can sue me for anything.
gotcha.
Also,
All
I'm not
right.
like publishing anything that's derogatory about anyone. In most of the stores, I've been like, hey, read your fucking chapter and get it back to me so I can print it correctly. Otherwise, I'm just going to print what I know about your store. And according to one of the store owners, who is a former lawyer, and now owns a comic book store, he's like, nobody can really sue you for promoting their store. Just an FYI. You might have a fact wrong here or there, but as long as you're not writing anything that's derogatory about them, even then, what are they going to sue?
That's a very good point. There's
nothing that anybody can sue you for when you're promoting their store. But even if you have a fact about their store or them wrong, as long as they're not basically writing anything that might not be on, let's say, online. Oh, the store manager was a complete and utter butthole to me when I came in. You know, I do mention, like, there are a lot of comments about this store on the internet you should read about.
Google reviews. Gotcha. All right, Chris. Well, thank you for your time, and I hope that you get lots of success here in the near future, and I'll keep up with you, hopefully, to get a vampire and maybe give me some guidance when I go up to New England. So
that's one of the things that I definitely always love to mention, is that I'm never into this for success. The money is obviously helpful. If I have to print this myself, the money back to with what I printed for it is fantastic. But in terms of like recognition, it's not recognition of like, ooh, fame and fortune and babes and cars. It's no, I just wanted the story to get out there so you have any enjoyment of it. The money is a secondary thing behind it all. Also, recoup my losses is obviously who's stupid enough not to want to recoup their losses.
Sure, obviously. So,
I'm never in it for the success. I'm in it for the success of the story.
Okay. All right. Well, Chris, we will talk to you soon. I hope that your night ends up well after the storm. So
it's a weird storm. It's more of an electrical storm because it's been off and on rain, but I've seen a flash in the sky here or there.
Yeah, I got taken out for a week 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
If you're in Texas, then I understand one of the people that's involved in my TV show lost his power for a week in Texas.
No, obviously I'm in Atlanta, in a suburb.
Oh, Atlanta, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we lost power for 24 hours, but the internet and cable and all that was down for like a week. So a small, they don't call them tornadoes, they're downdrafts.
That's what you have books for. Books don't need power. They just need pages and light.
I got a whole bookshelf behind me still to read. So yes, I agree. Because I know as soon as my phone was dead, I was like, all right, what do? Let's go back.
You light a candle and you read a book like your great grandfather did.
Yep, exactly. That's funny. You say
again, thank you for letting me come on despite the technical issues. I appreciate it. You guys have been fantastic. I'll continue monitoring your show, and maybe you guys can come on Radio Horror in the future.
Hey, sounds good.
A bit of a prisoner exchange. Mickey likes that sort of thing.
Yeah, we all like to trade around people. So yeah, absolutely, I'd love to. So I'm sure Shay would. Have a good night, Chris. Thanks.
Both have a great night. Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, we hit that right at the 1 hour mark. I was timing us, so very good. Shay, anything coming on in your world or going on that you want to tell us about? You doing any shows or?
No, I'll be here. I don't have any other shows this weekend.
Well, we do have tomorrow. I did have my calendar here somewhere. One of these 5 buttons. Tomorrow we have great. It's kind of a sports insider. We've got she's started here in Atlanta and now she's moved out to Oregon, and she was a roller girl, so it's into sports, and she's also the project manager for Albatross Funny Books. So I kind of want to talk to her about that too. So we got that, and then Friday we have Triple F. I just drew a total blank. Coming on team.
Female firefighters.
There you go. Fierce female firefighter Tina, Lieutenant Tina, is going to be on the show. So that's going to be a good show. So tune in for that. Please go over to our YouTube channel if you're hearing this on Spotify or Apple or wherever, and find us under the Sportcat shows, and give us a thumbs up, a like, a follow, a review, something. Let us know we're on the right path. And of course, you can always, if you're into rock and roll music, you can catch me on the Thin Line Rock Station Tuesdays and Thursdays, noon till 2 and 6 to 11 on Friday nights, doing Flashback Fridays. I'm doing some disco this week. So I had a couple requests. So that goes down. I think 3 requests. So we got that going on. That show's taking off quite well, and I'm loving it. I'm loving every minute of it. So, well, Shay, I will let you go, and I'm going to go out of here with thanking the Parapost Network for everything they do for us. Yerg's Radio Network, we couldn't get along without you. As the Thin Line Rock Station, we appreciate you. And we've got this great little video I'd like for you to watch. If I can figure out the button. Why is it? I had problems with the button.